context in which Jesus talks about sins against you. And he talks about how concerned about this because he then gives a parable. He talks about, woe to this world, verse 7, but who temptation to sin. It's necessary that temptation come because of what God is doing, and yet he goes on and talks about that. And he says, see, verse 10, that you do not despise one of these adults or children who are putting their trust in me, that you do facilitate them, and that you don't mess up this thing, because my Father in heaven, and he gives us a parable about someone having sheep, and one goes off, and picturesque of the father leaves the 99 and goes off for that one that isn't listening, that isn't going to the Father, to Jesus, to stand in the midst and be the model. Father goes after him. Look what he says here, verse 14. So it is not the will of my Father who is in heaven that one of these little ones should perish. That's the context, folks. Not the context of your brother who sins against you. Believer. And then he says this. It's sin here that we're dealing with. Verse 18, if your brother sins against you. We are talking sin here. We're not talking preference here. We're not talking I'd rathers. We're not talking generational differences. We're not talking language differences. We're talking sin here. You know, there are generational differences. Let me just give you one. It seems like the younger folks ought to dress up more. Why is that? Is that a biblical issue? Oh, no. Well, it seems like the older ought not to be so concerned about their image. Why is that? Is that a biblical issue? Could be, depending on what the image is we're talking about. Yeah, let me just use one this morning. Matt talked about stuff happening in this world, and he used a C word. Did you hear that? If that C word would have went off in a church in another place, well, let me ask you, is that C word sin? That's a hard decision because we've got some issues here. What word did you use? There you go. Thank you. Would I say it? I have gotten in trouble in churches for less than that, okay? I think we've already got it fully established. Moving right along. I'm not talking preference here. I'm not talking what seems right to me because of my culture. I'm talking about biblical directions here. And you know, we've got enough biblical directions that this word is sufficient, and we don't need to add our own. Amen? We've got enough. We've got enough. And the church needs to get its muscles strengthened to pick out those are the biblical issues and those that aren't.